Welcome back to my channel again today, my lovelies. Today we're going to be doing a fun late summer craft and turn all of this fresh lavender that I got at a local lavender festival into some lavender wands. They started coming about in the 19th century and are really helpful in keeping your wardrobe smelling nice. To do this though, you're going to need some ribbon, scissors, and a bunch of fresh lavender. And I'm talking maybe day or two old lavender. You don't want it to have been sitting around in a vase for too long. Dry off those stems if you have been trying to soak it to keep it from drying out. And let's get started. What do you say? So first thing that you end up doing, especially when you get more of a rustic you pick kind of lavender situation, you're going to go through and make sure that you've got your lavender stalks roughly the same size and bundled all of the similar sized bits of lavender together. If you're planning on doing a simple over/under one weaving pattern later, grab an odd number of stalks. And with these stalks, make sure you take all of the extra little leaf bits off, any extra odd buds that you might have around. I did dry these and start putting them into little sachets. That way I could also stick them in drawers and get the most out of my lavender bundles that I purchased. As you get all of your lavender bundled together, try and get the buds all to match up at roughly the same spot. That's because you're going to be tying a knot at the base of these here in just a minute. Now, it doesn't have to be anything super crazy or secure. I just do a simple little slip knot sort of overhead knot situation, and I try to get that knot as close to the edge or the bottom of my flower bundles as I can. That's going to help pad the stems as you start bending them over all of your lavender buds. This part's probably the trickiest while you're bending your stems over. I've known some people to grab a spoon to try and help gently bend those stalks of the lavender over your buds. If you're not in the mood to do that, I just try and do them one, maybe two at a time and take it really slow. I'm not trying to just slap them down over those buds and squeeze it hard. I'm actually cradling the edges of the stalks in my other hand rather than trying to force them to do anything. This does kind of require you to have some dexterity with both of your hands because while you're holding the stalks together with one, you're going to be using your other hand to weave the ribbon back and forth between your stalks. And this is where knowing if you're doing a 1/1, 2/2, 1/, 2/, whatever your weaving pattern you're going to do with these is going to look like, is super important. The earliest records I could find of using lavender wands, just like these ones, actually started in the late 19th century was the time frame I'd been able to find information, so talking late Victorian, maybe early Edwardian. And they all seem to have started as a cottage craft, basically out of Provence, France. With that said, lavender has been used by a ton of people for a long time to help keep their chest smelling nice when it's full of linens and other important bits, as well as cupboards, your home in general. It's been well known and documented as being used to help sweeten the smell of your home for years and years and years. This craft in particular is kind of handy because you're not taking a ton of time to sew something together. Using other resources you might be using mending or doing something else. You're just using ribbon. And ribbon was something they had pretty ready access to, and was not nearly as expensive as getting full pieces of fabric where you might have other uses for them. At least that's sort of the idea that I was able to gather. Now, the wider ribbon that you use when you're weaving back and forth, the faster your wand is going to go. But the trade-off with that is that you might be losing more of those buds over time. The smaller, narrower ribbons it's going to take longer to put this together, but it's locking in those buds much more securely, to the point where you, over time, can actually just roll them over a hard wooden surface, and it will crush the buds and kind of reactivate some of those oils, give them a second lease on life. While you're weaving, keep in mind you don't have to weave this ribbon all the way down to the bottom of those stalks unless you really want to. Your goal is to get to the base of where the buds are, and depending on how long your lavender stalks are, that's going to be a little bit different from everybody. So keep that in mind and keep an open mind on what you're doing. So either way, once you get to the end, take a nice deep breath of your wonderful lavender wand, tie a knot to try and secure everything, and there's a bunch of different ways you can finish off the ends, and we're going to look at a couple of them. So one simple way you could take care of this is just to tie a knot, tie a bow, and then have all of those little lavender stalks sprayed out everywhere. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, I just don't care for that look. I prefer them to be a little bit more neat and tidy. So I'm going to wrap the ribbon down the ends of my stalks. I might do that with both ends, the free-flowing end that I had on my original knot, or just the tail that I cut off. I suppose if you really wanted to, rather than tying a knot at the very bottom of your wand, you could also stitch this together, depending on the overall look you're wanting at the bottom. But I kind of like the bows. That's just me though. You can use satin ribbon when you're making these. Just keep in mind that the satin ribbon might be a little bit slipperier when it comes to tying things off on the bottom, but it is actually a lot easier to do the weaving, which is kind of the bulk of the whole project. So use that as you will. Trade-offs are what they are. On this one, I didn't leave enough of a tail on my initial knot, so I'm just kind of trying to get it tied together. Another thing you're going to want to do, no matter which style you use, is trim off those edges so that you don't have anything sticking out to get caught as you put stuff away. But I hope you're enjoying watching all of my lovely lavender wand tutorial. I've gone through and tried it with a bunch of different ribbon types. I have narrow satin ribbons, grosgrain ribbons, twill weaves, and they've all got their pros and cons. The satin was probably the easiest to weave, but the hardest to tie off. Wider went faster, but the narrower ones keep everything locked in for the long haul. But if you are so inspired to make more of these little wands, I would love for you to tell me about them. Are you putting them in your dresser drawers to try and keep your just normal day-to-day stuff smelling nice? Are you stashing it in shelves and on closets, hanging them, putting them into chests of drawers? Just tell me. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. I am so grateful that you're all watching out there, and definitely go out there, tag me on Instagram if you make something, and hit that like and subscribe button. In the meantime, I will see you next week at Cozy 2021, and I hope you have an amazing afternoon.